Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics today with your hosts, Kyle Buller and Joe Moore. Really excited to chat with the team from Decriminalize Nature, Larry Norris and Veronica Hernandez. Welcome to the show. Really excited to chat about this topic and what Decriminalize Nature is all about, and also the big win in Oakland not too long ago. So yeah, really excited to chat with you both.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
It's exciting too. I know you guys are obviously working directly with this as well, so it'll be fun to have sort of a meeting of the minds here.
Yeah, exactly. Let's dig into a little bit of background and bio. So Veronica, do you want to start off and just give the listeners and viewers a little bit about you?
Yes, I'm a clinical psychologist licensed in Peru. I've been working, since I came here in the United States as a social worker clinician, and later on decided to combine plant medicines, like the plant medicines, and meaning it combine as put the spirituality back into psychology. So that's how I got involved in all the work and education that it's needed for plant medicines to be part of, I wouldn't say the medical model, but the health model, integral model of health that we're looking for. So I'm currently finishing my PhD at CIIS, and happy to be part of this team. All my life, since I was 14, I've dedicated to, the knowing and learning and going through my own healing with plant medicines, which are, let's say ayahuasca in Peru is national patrimony. So state and church can touch it. So that's the background that I come from. And trying to create community and a model of healing that is more wholesome than what we currently have, So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And how about you, Larry?
My name is Larry Norris. I am also in the same PhD crew as Veronica over here, working our butts off, but taking a little break so we can change the world, have to do that, right? Started about the same time with Veronica. We actually, she didn't mention this earlier, but we actually were part of the core nexus that created ERIE, the team that really started that up at CIS in 2011. We became board and a 501c3 nonprofit in 2015, and the organization basically focuses on bringing education services, integration services to people in the local Bay Area. Really been working a lot with doing peer integration circles, bringing people together in community, helping to alleviate alienation or isolation that may come from a profound experience, coming together and just like reflecting, offering discernment, having some sort of discourse around the conversation. We're actually holding one of those in a couple hours tonight, so that's pretty exciting. We all came together, as a group in mid-December, talking about a different idea, which is basically like, putting a community center together around these ideas and like, how far can we go? Obviously, we can't work with the plant material. What can we do as far as education, integration, community, that type of thing? And then somebody in the conversation was like, hey, this thing's happening in Denver and this happening in Oregon, why can't we do that? And then we can really have a conversation about these community centers. And one thing led to the other, and, we just had the right synergy of people together in the room. And, Carlos happened to work at Oakland City Council, so we knew some people that we can make some connections with. And that really just started the process. By late January, we had our resolution written, which I think was a really key and integral component of what we did, because we had something tangible to show everybody. It wasn't like, oh yeah, we're doing this thing and here are some ideas. It's like, here's our written document and how do we go from here? And it was much easier to get a sponsor that way versus, trying to talk to people about something that they couldn't really see in their hands. So that was kind of critical to this, but it's been an amazing process. And, sort of like it's just reflective of all the work people have been doing for so many years, because, there is, we weren't just asking people to come out and talk. We were asking people to come out and talk on record. And that's a huge, huge thing. And they're putting their names down on the government records saying, I'm breaking the law, and this is why it's important, and this law needs to change. And so somebody mentioned the other day that June 17th was Psychedelic coming out of the closet day or something like that. And I sort of asked maybe perhaps May 28th or June 4th would be the appropriate dates, because this is the first day that people came out on record at a government office to really state their opinions and shared about their important experiences. So hopefully that will come around too. But yeah, this has been really exciting.
So did you need to get a sponsor on the city council for Oakland? Okay, Cool. Was that a complicated process?
It wasn't complicated. I mean, for all of us, it was the first time when we did it, so everything was complicated at first, right? Because we didn't really know what to do or how we were doing things. But we met about 3 or 4 different city council members, and then we met Council Member Gallo, and he was actually very supportive. Also, very open to listening to what we had to say. And once he offered his support as far as a sponsorship, things really started moving. So that actually helps quite a bit, because now there's sort of a focal point. There's somebody that's willing to champion your ideas, bring it to the table, have conversations with you, let you know which communities maybe need a little bit more focus, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a really big, huge part of it. And that's, I think it's critical, and I don't know because I haven't done other cities, but we're about to find out. I think it's good to have a sponsor, because they're the one that's going to make sure that it goes to a vote. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of citizens like knocking on the door,
Yeah. Joe, did Denver have a sponsor for their bill?
Well, it was a very different scenario, right? Because it went to a vote as
Oh,
opposed to going to the city council for their vote. So, these excellent folks only had to convince 12 people?
8 people.
8 people.
8 people, and
Yeah,
have to vote on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin Matthews in Denver, that's tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, you guys had to have 90,000 people convinced. We needed 8 people convinced. That could be easier or harder, depending upon things.
So that's a great point, though. Like, what towns are there out there where you can make these kinds of changes with the city council, as opposed to spending tens of thousands of dollars to lobby the way Denver did? So it's a great question for other cities that are interested in doing a similar thing.
Yeah, and that's what we're noticing too, is like a lot of people already know their city councils. They know the progressive members of their city councils. So for example, yesterday there were people already contacting Santa Cruz. Like I said, we're going to be meeting Berkeley on Thursday. There are people that are already taking action, all over the place. And it's funny, the story with Santa Cruz was, the one woman who chatted with me was going to have a meeting. And when she left the meeting, the person that was coming right in after her was asking about the same thing. So they joined teams and did the second meeting as well. So I'm sure that there are city council members across the U.S. right now that are getting bombarded with this, which is fantastic. It just shows that people are really motivated to make this happen. It's not like they're just like, oh, this is great, I'll like it on social media, but people are actually setting up meetings and making it happen.
Yeah, that's exciting. I guess to backtrack a little bit for those that don't know what's in the resolution, do you want to go over what that entails?
Yeah, sure. So the resolution itself is the decriminalization of all plants and fungi on Schedule 1. So this is thousands of plants, all mushrooms that contain psilocybin, all cacti that contain mescaline, from San Pedro all the way to peyote, but we don't really mention peyote because of, obviously, we mentioned it once for use as a Native American church, but there are obviously sustainability issues. So that's a big part of what we're thinking about when we're crafting the resolution and not mentioning it all. We also didn't mention the Sonoran Desert Toad for the same reason, although it's in there as far as a form of DMT or natural materials. But our main focus was plants. So that would be the main 4. If you want to consider it in like each category, it would be mushrooms, cacti, plants containing ibogaine, which isn't only iboga, but volcangine and star jasmine, these types of things, and then plants similar to ayahuasca. So any other of the DMT or MAOI brews, there could be up to 4,000 of those across the world. I think like 80 MAOI and some other number. I could be wrong on those with DMT. So there's a lot of those combinations that haven't really been explored, and that are also naturally growing, and sometimes in the case of star jasmine, almost invasive species in the Bay Area. So there's something that we can sustainably source right here locally and work with plants that are local, and actually kind of speaks to the environment as well, if you kind of believe the idea that the plants are speaking to the place as well. And I think that's really a big part of this, really looking at that. We also did a pretty broad range. We focused on both the potential medical benefits, the psychological benefits, but also the spiritual benefits, the personal growth benefits, and these types of things, the long traditions of use across the world. We kind of took this as not a drug policy thing, but more of an inalienable right to nature kind of thing. This is our right to be able to have our own relationship to nature. And so I think that was also something, we used the word entheogen instead of psychedelic. So we tried a lot of these different sort of counterintuitive, everyone is saying, you have to go this strategy because this is the way it needs to happen. And we kind of went a different way, and it actually worked out really well because we were able to then sort of define the conversation in a different way. Whereas, a word like psychedelic, people hear that, they have baggage. Whether or not you like the word or not, there's still something to it. And so it kind of like forces a new conversation for folks. but yeah, there's a whole bunch in the resolution. Definitely, we have it on our website. If you go to decriminalizenature.org, and we also have the agenda report on there. But there was some amendments that happened on the last day from Councilmember Taylor, and so those are on there. And we don't have those online yet, but we're going to be putting those up soon. And basically, those are around safe and responsible practice. Very important. Education, very, very important. You know, making sure that we're going out to the communities and helping people out. And also the final thing would be, you know, we had a couple regulations, and this is when you feel like you're on the right page with everyone. When the regulations, you're both like, yeah, of course, like no driving. Yes, of course. That makes sense. Not on school grounds. Yeah, okay, sure, totally no problem. You know, public disturbance, somebody needs to be helping the person. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And that's really about all that there was concerns about. They did do something that you guys did in Denver, which was they asked for a 1-year sort of review. So I think that's something that you guys had in the resolution there in Denver that we didn't put in there, but we were looking at it and curious as to whether or not that was something we should address, and we definitely made it in the last amendment. So that's pretty great. And then just as a side funny story, if you're on the Oakland City Council, turn this off right now. But it's a side funny story. In the process of some of the last minute amendments, we had talked about some plants and what they look like, what you know, the dry powder, the tea, you know, the extracted material, what that looks like. And in that process, we were talking about DMT extractions from phalaris grass and things like that, and mentioned how it could be done with a lemon wash, et cetera, et cetera. And that was in the legislation for about an hour. So
wow.
We had the recipe accidentally copy and pasted and put it in the resolution, and then quickly take it out. But you know, but that's been a fun process, and you know, it's been really active with trying to really talk with everybody and engage the process.
Right. Now, Veronica, from your perspective, being from a different country, like what was the experience like for you working through like a California local government relative to like
it's something that I personally like couldn't believe that it was happening. I mean, where I grew up, like let's say ayahuasca and plant medicines are national patrimony, so state and church can't touch them. They're above all that. It's a practice that I wouldn't say that it's, you know, like all Peruvians work with plant medicines, but it is a practice that is very ingrained in the culture. And to be able to do something for those plants, first off, to get you know, a different sense than drugs, because they're all Schedule 1. So that was one, to recognize the importance of these plant medicines that are here to help us. Like they're great healers that, you know, we can take them and then not only heal ourselves, which is the main thing that we want to do, you know, any trauma, any social stigmas. I mean, we all suffer from things, but to be able to bring it to a country that is considered Schedule 1, and so many people from America and Europe go to Peru every day to centers because there is a need for that. There is a need for healing, for personal growth, for transformation, elevating consciousness, and all those things that we are for, that we need right now in order to address the crisis, not only here, but like a global crisis. The planet needs some help. And these plants are powerful allies. So it was, for me, it was just I don't know, something that is beyond the education and the health, but it's putting the plants, doing right to the plants, you know, because they can help us be better humans, live in community, learn how to be in communal force to do something like we did, like this group. We all volunteer, we all feel the same way, and you know what, in a few months, this is what happened. So I believe that we can transform many structures, we can transform many things with the aid of this plant. So for me, it was just like the world needs them, and I'm glad I could do a little bit in that participation and have it come to this. So now the work is, okay, what are we gonna do with all this? And the commitment to, you know, really working at it, bringing it to the community and to the people that don't have access to it, to the people that really need it, but there's no language, there's no services, there's no education around that, because nobody wanted to come up front and say, these things do work. I had a healing here or there, because it's illegal and everybody's scared. And now we can, relax and actually do educate and bring that into the community.
That's really great. I appreciate that perspective. Now, what exactly, so there was some language that we've seen bounced around a bunch about non-commercialization, because, we're still decriminalized, right? There's no like regulatory framework for us to sell these still state and federally scheduled substances. Like what does this look like now? Like there's obviously people with these things and they probably want to share them. So what does that look like?
Yes. So I would say, and maybe, you could probably talk to this a little bit too. A big part of this is just that we're watching what's happening with cannabis right now. And there's this beautiful plant that can do this healing or help creativity or spiritual growth. And it's being a tug of war between money interests in the tax side, government, or the corporate interests on the other side. And so it's just a bummer to see that there's people that actually need this, and they have to fight for their taxes that are 40% here, something ridiculous like that, and so we were kind of learning from that and saying, well, how can we do the same thing and not put these plants in the tug of war? Because I think most of us that have these experiences know that yes, there's obviously reciprocity, but when it gets to be a money thing, when it gets to be a commercial thing, it loses its magic, so to speak, And so that was a really big thing that we talked about. And so how that might look, currently, it would be if somebody has it, obviously they're okay. There's no sales allowed. So if somebody was to sell something, then I guess they could get, arrested for that, because that's not okay. But in terms of like trading it or growing it or having it and, community, all that kind of thing, doing a community ceremony, all that's fine. Sometime down the road, I could see something where the plant material itself is still not commodified, but you would obviously pay for people's services and skill sets and qualities. Okay, this person's an excellent facilitator, so you're paying for their time to facilitate, or this person's great with educating you on how to grow. Okay, that would be a service, these types of things. But to leave the plant material out of it altogether, and maybe you can speak to that a little bit more too.
Yes, and that's one of the things too that I think what we want to start now is educating people, educating people on what these plants can bring, educating people on safe practices with it. And hopefully down the road, like Larry said, like there can be places that people can have access that is not like commercialization of the plants, but it's actually paying for services to certain people. Some might go the route of the clinical, might go the route of doing it in community, or doing it with a curandero or an ayahuasquero or somebody that holds that space because they've learned to do that. What we really want to bring now, I think it's all the demystifying all the things about plant medicines and drugs and psychedelics. That's one. And then the other one is also, how do you have safe practices, whether you have maybe a small amount and you want to do a journey on your own, what are the practices that you would need? Sitters, have somebody there for you. I mean, all those things that people don't know unless they have participated. So we want to educate at every level, so people, when they actually want to or decide to use any of these plants for healing, that they know how to, and it's not going to be an issue of, oh, you know what, this happened and therefore this was not supposed to be out of schedule or decriminalized.
That sounds like a really difficult conversation. Well, whilst noble and like what we should be striving for, like how do we get there? Because that, how do you fit a 2 to 4 year education into 3 weeks or something, Because that's kind of what it sounds like, right? Or are we going to be doing more community engagement where the Oakland community is very ready to act when something happens? How does that look from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say there's maybe two things real quick with that. First of all, is like, by going the growing no cells route, like automatically it's going to take people 6 months to 7 years to 10 years to even get something that they could have usable. So there's going to be, there's a maturation process in that. There's a responsible use. You're growing something, you're learning about this process. You're not going to do it frivolously, I should say, if you're actually watching that. Maybe you are, but it seems like that's the case. And so I think that's one big piece of it. And I think another big piece of this is that maybe we go ahead, because I'm just spacing on what I just was thinking there.
Well, one of the things is, what we are thinking now, because we just, had a meeting last week, was we need to connect with, key people in the community and educate them so that they can reach to the community. They have the language, they know the people because they've been working there, whether they're clinics or, let's say, Clínica de la Raza or, La Familia, all those places. I am just talking about the Latin community, which is the one that I'm more connected with. But also with the indigenous communities. So start our education, making those liaisons with people so that they can reach to the broader community. It would be impossible for us to go somewhere, show up, and start educating on plant medicines and entheogens and the benefits of it. So it's reaching the key people in the community.
And I think
one way.
I think just what I was going to thank you for that's exactly right on point. What I was going to say too is what I think that we're also learning is, although there is a lot of places where we need to do outreach, it's becoming really clear that there's a lot of places that have the people there already. It's like, just to not underestimate the power of the underground community and how many people have been hiding for so long. It's like, what's exciting about this too is you have a situation where, just like cannabis, everyone was hiding in their closet, and then everyone could come above ground and be like, hey, look at all these tricks that we learned, right? And so now it's the same thing. We've now opened the door up just enough for people in all these different places in Oakland to start contacting us and letting us know about how they're ready to bring this into their communities. So I think that, that it's there. Obviously, we're going to need to bring in safe and responsible practices, but also being flexible to understand that we don't know what maybe the best practices for each neighborhood is. And maybe there's new things we'll learn from that. And I think that's really important as well. So it's going to be an educating and learning process for both of us.
Collaboration.
Exactly.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point of things are probably being done in specific ways or not really specific ways. And there's a lot of opportunity to grow and see, maybe what are best practices, and maybe they'll change over the time, and maybe being able to decriminalize this and people aren't as worried, there's more participation in being able to figure out, maybe there's other ways to do this. And that seems really exciting, because we are kind of we have thousands of years of indigenous use. That seems to make sense. But then also, how are we incorporating it into our culture, right? I mean, much different worlds now.
It has to be culturally relevant for us. Otherwise, we'll lose some of the major, ideas, and that also gives us an opportunity to develop something new. We're speaking to these older traditions, we're looking at them, but we're also coming from our perspectives, and that gives us kind of an empowerment in there too.
And I had a conversation with some ayahuasqueros and healers from Peru, some of my teachers too, and they were really excited about what was happening in Oakland, supportive of it. There's not that piece about cultural appropriation and things like that, because they know that the plants need to move. Not everybody has the capacity or the money or the resources to go to the jungle, and not every healer can be traveling for things, and also for language and things like that, and a place to be. So I think that collaboration also with the jungle is very exciting. I'm going to be going to Peru in July and see what can be done that way as well. Yeah.
What kind of protections do you see or potential risks around the state government? Or do you not see any?
Hopefully we can get enough cities before too long. That's obviously, I think it's we have to worry about city, then we have to worry about county, then we have to worry about state, then we have to worry about federal. It seems like there's a lot of things happening on the federal level, so I don't really see there being a lot of funding, and hopefully, knock on wood, funding to go towards something like people healing themselves from natural plant materials or fungi materials. But but like I say, if we continue to move from a city to city level, it works kind of multiple prongs, because you have sort of the appreciation that this is a big conversation for a lot of people. But, for example, if Berkeley ends up decriminalizing, which is a potential possibility, then you can actually share resources from all of Berkeley to all of Oakland, and they're like sister cities in that regard. They're right next to each other. So now you've opened the conversation to a larger group of people. And I think that's really exciting too. Then maybe after that, it could be like the county or things like that. So, if we can get San Diego, LA, Sacramento, San Francisco, a couple places up in Northern California in the Bay Area, that's going to be really hard for the state to say no to. And then maybe we can go a legislative route. The state ballot, it's just a tough thing. That's like a $20 million budget you need for that. And that's just to get the signatures. And then you have to get people to vote. And there's just a lot of process there. And the thing that we also were thinking about in terms of the state initiative is that we're hoping that this is a little bit more responsible, and that by doing it city by city, you're sort of backlogging all of your community. The community is like, okay, we're here, we're ready to go. And if the community can't get together to put, resolution together, then maybe they don't have the community to offer the education and the resources and the responsible and safe use and that type of thing. Rather, if you go on a state level, you might get a couple of coastal cities, but then there's other places that you don't even touch on, and then they're also open to all of this conversation. And so how are we going to get into those places? So I really like the idea of going municipality by municipality, because it gives everyone an opportunity to say, hey, we can take direct action. This is actually possible. This isn't a broken system. And B, because it allows the community to engage directly with their neighbors and things like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I was chatting with somebody that lived in Vermont, and he was really talking about local politics and just how involved they are with it. And, it really made me think there is potential. I don't think most people think about maybe local politics or really how to create change, and how that can actually ripple out and create bigger change by getting involved. Being able to pass an initiative like this, it's already had nationwide ripples, right? People are already reaching out to you guys. How can I do this? How can I maybe do this in my town or city? And that seems huge, instead of always kind of thinking about this big, we need to go on a state level or federal level. How do we start in these small little places and hopefully have ripples, toss some little pebbles in the pond and
yeah. If you time it right, then the pebbles, the pond gets a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger,
Yeah. Do you see, have you guys had any backlash yet from folks? Any of concerns of this is dangerous, and how are you guys responding to that?
Yeah. Surprisingly, our biggest backlash has kind of come from folks that are in the community, which is, part and parcel, I guess. But the people that we would have expected the biggest backlash for, like the law enforcement or certain community members, or, I guess there's always the Sean Hannitys out there who are like, people are going to go crazy on the street or whatever. But, that's not really the case, But the law enforcement and, the city council members were very open. Many of them have had, friends or family or somebody that they know that is, connected either to the research or has heard about something. So they were super informed. And I think, this is something that kind of transcends politics to some degree. If you're on the right side of the aisle, left side of the aisle, you're independent, whatever, this is something that everyone can connect with. You just have to figure out the right way to sort of have that conversation, because you're not going to maybe have the same conversation, this mystical spiritual experience is in this helps addiction, or this helps with PTSD, or, this is good for creativity, or these types of things. So just knowing your conversation and your audience, I think has been really helpful. But as far as the backlash within community, it's been kind of interesting. We're kind of being tugged between the psilocybin only crew and the decriminalize all drugs crew, and so we're kind of right in the middle of that. And, our proposal, since it was only Schedule 1, both Poppy and Coke are Schedule 2, so that wasn't included on there. We just stuck with the Schedule 1 ones, but there's a big kind of push around that. There's some folks that are kind of criticizing that we didn't directly talk about sustainability to the degree that they were hoping in the resolution. I hope that this is something that people will read the resolution and actually look at the resolution and see how careful we were with that. Like I said earlier, we're talking about plants similar to, by not really using the word peyote or Sonoran desert toad at all. And then even if you look at the agenda report, mentioned the sustainability issues. So we were limited to an 8-person audience and a 2-page document. So we did the best we could on that. But that's definitely something that we'd even considered, even as far as locally sourced plants, and even doing curriculums based around that as well. So it's something we're obviously considering. This is the Bay Area. It's a big conversation here,
Yeah.
I'm thinking okay, so within a few months, we've got 1 city with decriminalized psilocybin-containing mushrooms, and then 2 legalized psychedelic plants, or decriminalized psychedelic plants. the Decriminalize All Drugs crew hasn't really been successful yet, because that's a really difficult message. And that's going to take a while. I agree with them, but I think it's going to be a step in that direction. It's going to be slow. This obviously, with our cultural narrative at this point, is a possibility. You know, Oakland is pretty far left, so we're going to have to find similarly far left cities, and then eventually we can lean into further right-leaning cities that say, okay, you have half of your population is veterans and half of them have PTSD. Perhaps we should look at this.
But even San Diego and Sacramento have reached out, and those are more conservative cities in the state of California. So that's exciting too. You know, it's exciting that there's more. I mean, San Diego is like probably number 2 as far as outreach. You know, Berkeley will kind of expect. San Francisco, of course, that's going to happen at some point in time, right? But it's nice to see San Diego and Sacramento really stepping up to the plate for this.
Right, and with the amount of veterans and active duty people in San Diego, that would be a really interesting ripple effect nationwide, I think. And it's like the 4th largest or 5th largest city in the country. So that's a really big deal.
For sure.
That happens there. And not to mention Sacramento, the state capital, that would also be quite the thing.
Exactly.
Are there other cities that you're aware of outside of California?
Oh yeah. We have, let me see if I can find the thing. We have we have 50 different cities across 30 states now, I think. We had some, we put up a map the other day on our social media, and some of the people that weren't noticed on the maps called up pretty quickly. So that's great to see too. People are like, wait a second, we're missing Delaware, we're missing Connecticut, or Georgia's not on there. What's going on? Let's get that on there. And so I think there's also this like natural like excitement that people are kind of pushing each other, like, come on, Minnesota, let's get going. You know, and everyone's getting their community together and feeling like, okay, we can do this, but we need to come together. But I'll just real briefly name off a couple of the cities, you know, Berkeley City Council that we're meeting, you know, on Thursday. So that'll probably be more closer than others. Maybe Santa Cruz too, because it looks like there's already that sponsor situation. San Diego, like I said, Boston has actually got a lot of interest. Phoenix has actually got a lot of interest as well. Then we have Los Angeles, Eugene, Santa Cruz, Detroit, Chicago, Philly, and New York City, all kind of tied for 4th. Then San Francisco, Sacramento, Santa Barbara, Seattle, Ann Arbor, Hawaiian Islands, Denver, Boulder, Baltimore, and Marquette. We've actually had a lot of people reaching out from Denver as well, hoping that maybe you could take a little extra step there. So that'd be great. And then just a whole slew of others. Like I said, you know, we even had somebody from a senator from Mexico reach out, want to do something in her district for power plants as well. So, so again, I think you're right. You know, people are seeing that it's possible to do action on the city level. You know, if it's overwhelming to look at these huge ballot initiatives, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And, you know, all of a sudden, wait a second, I know enough people in my community. I have 10 friends that are, you know, specialists in this area. We can make this happen. You know, all we have to do is what we all do all the time, which is like tell people the benefits of this medicine, and people are open to hearing that. That's great.
Do you feel like you were taking like a big leap or risk possibly with including all plants versus like something like Denver did that just focused on one particular medicine?
Yeah, I would say so. But I think for us, it was risky either way, you know, because for us, we're in the Bay Area, and, you know, we have all these different communities here. And why do we want to fragment one community, the mushroom community, and also leave out the ayahuasca and the iboga and the DMT community, all these other communities? We want to come together and make nature be the glue to bring all these different communities together. And so I think we looked at it as, you know, even though everyone else was telling us it was too big a risk, we actually looked at it in such a way that we thought the other route, just going a single, was going to be more of a risk for us, because then you'd have some infighting and that type of thing.
Inside the community, you know, and what we wanted is to all come together for all the plants, not only the ones that we're connected more to. So, yeah.
All right. That's beautiful. You brought up a point, I think, when we were chatting a little bit off recording about how to approach a law enforcement. And I'm curious, like, how you guys are working with law enforcement or even having conversations. Are you doing that, or are you having other people kind of reach out?
Yeah, so the day before the actual vote, we had a meeting with law enforcement officers, all the 4 chief law enforcement officers, and 2 of us that were in there, who obviously we do this work. So, you know, that was kind of a bit of a surprise to be sitting down and not know that they would be sitting across from us. And we had some of our breathing exercises. They're like, okay, are we getting arrested today, or what's going on? Right? So, but that was really great. You know, like I said earlier, like that was really a powerful, pretty healing for myself and the other individual as well, because, you know, they were open to hearing. They, you know, they had questions that were good questions, you know, reasonable questions. They had reasonable requests. They wanted to know how to make their neighborhood safe. You know, how do we tell one from the other, you know, what to do here. And so that was actually pretty great in terms of having that conversation. Now, the next step would be like basic seminars, you know, so like, you know, showing people what we're talking about, what some of the effects are, what the benefits could be, sort of the molecular structures or things to look out for on the street. And those will be in a series of seminars that we'll be giving coming up. Hopefully one of those seminars could involve learning, you know, but we'll see. I doubt that's going to happen, because I think there's federal laws that stop that to happen. But it would be nice someday to actually be able to offer seminars where one of the seminars is, you know, part of this is the inner experience, and you really have to have an experience to kind of get it. Obviously, this is, you know, 30 years down the road, maybe sooner, but that would be a really great part to implement in, because I think, you know, especially there's a lot of great research looking at first responders, PTSD for first responders, being able to help with this, addiction with first responders related to work-related issues, things like that can be really, really beneficial. And we know a lot of first responders in the Bay Area that are interested in this already, and it's been really helpful for them. So I don't think it'll be a hard, you know, the word is out there, and now people are probably whispering within those communities as well about the possible benefits. So that's a good thing.
We have a friend up in Canada who focuses on that, first responders and psychedelics and cannabis. And yeah, he said there's a huge need for that. A lot of like kind of vicarious trauma too, dealing with that PTSD of showing up to certain scenes and just dealing with a lot of stuff. So that's interesting.
Did you see that thing recently with NYPD, like 9 police suicides in like the 2-week period?
Wow.
In NYPD, so that indicating serious trauma. So first responders are quickly catching up to the veteran population in that conversation, I think. So it's going to be really helpful.
Another thing too, I think that's really, you know, there's a lot of side benefits to this. And one of this is like, what's the main reason that police are coming to search you? You know, it's for something like drugs on you, you know? And so this even hopefully can shift that relationship where now there's somebody here that's, you know, doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is servicing and making sure people are protected and these types of things, but not like really trying to get into personal sovereignty or like, you know, criminalizing you for having a plant material on you, which causes a lot of like, you know, conflict. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Veronica, I'm kind of curious to maybe hear some comments. You said you got involved in plant medicine very early on because it was kind of part of the culture down in Peru. And I'm wondering, what is it like to be part of a culture that kind of embraces this, plant medicines and just plants versus, you know, being in the States where it's not so, yeah.
Criminalized.
Open to it. Yeah.
So,
part of the culture.
I grew up in the Andes. And in the Andes, there's a curandero that works with a physician. And, you know, like 5 years old, I had to go to the doctor. Instead of going to the doctor, I went to what they called it, a curandero. So that's my first memory of going and seeing a doctor, for instance. It's not all over Peru. Then I lived in Lima, you know, at age 6. My mom got into an accident, and that's how I got involved with plant medicines as well. At 14, I went to see a healer to see what could be done for my mom. So my dad and I went there, and we took our first San Pedro journey. And it was very, like, I felt, even at that age, you know, knowing that it's part of the culture to take on a plant medicine and have a personal connection to it. You know, not only for my mom, but then I realized, oh, this is for me, because I could have other feelings, opened up my heart to see more than I would see in ordinary states and with all the conditioning that we carry. So again, there is the freedom there to combine medicine and then alternative medicine, because this is alternative medicine. And coming to a country where that is considered a drug, like any other drug would be, like heroin and even cocaine in Peru. You know, we have coca leaves in the Andes, and then we have cocaine, you know, and then we had narco-terrorism because of the cocaine and what all involved. So we over there, not everybody uses them. Most people are aware of the benefits of it, but you have the freedom to choose. And I think that's the piece that I wanted to, and I felt that we needed here. just the freedom to choose something that is not going to harm you. It's not going to create an addiction. It's actually going to touch your heart and your soul. And that's what's needed. You know, not just live in our heads from an ego perspective, an individual perspective of, you know, I need to do this for myself, but it's like a community. And how can I be a better person to do my work, to grow my family, to grow the community, you know, and have a vision, a common vision. We need healing in this planet. There are things that are happening that we cannot not look at and then turn around because we don't have time either. I mean, it's not going to happen, or maybe in 300 years. Well, no, it's happening now. And we want to do something now to wake up and actually see if we can save every creature here on the planet is at stake because of us. So when we individually transform and we're connected to a community, I feel, and that's just my personal opinion, that plant medicines can definitely help people heal and open up to, you know, to creating something different outside of the box, outside of the conditioning, even wanting you to just be in touch with something bigger than yourself is one of the most important things, because a lot of the times in this society, I'm talking about in Peru, I mean, any place that is not in touch with our roots in a collective or in a community way, I don't think we're going to get anywhere if we don't start doing that. So that is, for me, like the wake-up call, like, let's do this now. Like, let's educate now so that people can have the freedom to choose. Not saying that it's, you know, that this can help anybody. I'm not promoting it, that everybody needs to be, but the people that actually want to use that can have that access and that freedom.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's a huge part, right? The choice, just being able to have that choice.
Yeah.
I had a friend that grew up in Peru, and later I chatted with her in high school, and then after, I didn't know anything about ayahuasca back then, otherwise I probably would have asked her earlier. But as I got older and started to get more interested in this stuff, I asked her, I was like, you know, what do you know about ayahuasca? You grew up in Peru. And she's like, oh, I don't know. You know, it's just, you get sick, people go into the jungle and they drink it, it's medicine, and they come back. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting way to put it. She's like, yeah, I don't know, it's just medicine. You go see a shaman and they drink it. And I was like, if I asked any Western person what ayahuasca is, they would come back with this DMT brew, clearing the chakras out, and the cosmic serpent. And it really put things in perspective of like the cultural difference there for me, of like, wow, yeah, people actually just see this in a totally different way than the drug narrative, that this is a drug and this is what it does.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm a little curious about kind of the infighting. Like, obviously this is a wildly discussed topic, right? People have crazy intense opinions on all sides. Like, what kind of discussions are you seeing, like from the mushroom people or from the decriminalize everything or nothing kind of crowds?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? That's okay. Yeah. So I would say that the main thing, you know, from the decrim only mushrooms, you know, the pushback is, you know, the pushback is basically, you know, it's harder, maybe less pushback now, because originally it was, that'll never work because nobody knows what all these plants are. And and you know, we want to go one at a time, and et cetera, et cetera. We know what's going to win. It's easier to win a single thing. Have you done your polling? You know, all those kind of common phrases. But you know, we're bringing a conversation that has never been had before, so it's really hard to do polling because nobody's even addressed it yet. Now it might be an interesting poll to see like what people think, but previous to our doing it, maybe it wasn't so much. So that was one thing, at least from the mushroom side, just the sense that it's too big, we're taking too much off. And then the sense from the decrim all drugs folks, seems like it's a conversation around, you know, the sense that if we start decriminalizing and separating, this is their terms, the good and bad drugs, you know, then it's going to be harder to decriminalize the quote unquote bad drugs. This is, again, their words, you know. And again, that's just kind of a confusing thing, because we're, again, trying to separate out this drug from nature conversation, which seems like the drug policy folks they're doing great work. You know, they've been doing great work for a while, but like you said earlier, they've been doing this for how long? And yet there's not really much movement in decrim all drug kind of thing. And then these little initiatives can happen that can actually make things move forward. So I think, you know, that's a tricky one because, you know, we're like you, we think it's a public health issue. You know, we agree with the, you know, the Portugal model, which is that, you know, these shouldn't be criminal things. If someone is dealing with this, they're going to have to work with it, you know, in a different setting than the jail setting would be more healthy. You know, obviously you don't put people in jail for that. But at the same time, I think given who we were working with in Oakland, the history of Oakland and the history of Oakland within the context of drugs and all those other things, and the big war on drugs and the racist kind of backing to that, that we were not maybe going to be able to go that route at all here. But I'm excited for when it does happen for folks, you know, and I think also we wanted to provide an opportunity for, you know, like if we're talking about equitable access, you know, we're not going to be saying equitable access for something like heroin, you know, giving free access to, you know, I mean, that's the idea. We're not going to be charging for these. There's going to be trading, these types of things. And I don't think as a culture, we're ready for that. You know, maybe perhaps after people see these as sacred plants, you know, and I'd much prefer someone to have a poppy tea instead of the pharmaceuticals to help with some pain that they have or something like that, something they can grow out of their backyard or whatever. And that would definitely be a preference, but I just think that we're maybe not there yet, you know. I don't know if you want
the cultural. Yeah, I'll let you chime in, Veronica, if you have anything to say there.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, also, you know, the cultural appropriation of you know, some of the traditions. Like, there was some conversation, like, you know, some people were not included from, you know, Native American churches and things like that, and you know, that is one conversation around happening around peyote, but then we have this other conversation from Peru and ayahuasca where they are actually sending a blessing, you know, and want to collaborate in some way. And that's more, you know, what we're trying to have the conversations as, I think, to everyone. We're open to talking to everyone, but we definitely want to solidify those connections with the people that actually have used this for millennia and they have the tradition, but they're happy that more people are going to have access, and not a lot of people need to go to the jungle and spend so much time and money over there when they can have it locally too. Mm-hmm. So that was one conversation that I had over the weekend. Mm-hmm. That was, you know, like really, it's really good to hear also from the people that hold the tradition, saying that it's great that you guys are taking that and that you're taking it in the world in your own way in a safe practice, but that you're taking the plants to heal the world.
And I think a slight misunderstanding with sort of the conversation around peyote too is that, you know, it's still illegal to harvest in Texas. It's still illegal to traffic it from Texas to Oakland. We didn't decriminalize any of that. So like that's still all against the law. It just means that within the city levels, there is a possibility to grow. And, you know, right now, Texas is being destroyed by mining companies and agribusiness and all these other things. And that's a bigger issue than the people in Oakland being able to grow their own. And, you know, like I said, it might take 5-7 years before they get their peyote buttons, but that's 5 to 7 years that we could actually have some peyote growing that we don't have to worry about extinction, you know, and that's a really big issue. And I think that's being missed a little bit here is like, you know, no sales here. So there's no market for it and people can grow it. And that really feeds into the sustainability idea that we can actually start having buttons that aren't going to be endangered. They might not be growing in their natural habitat, but at least they're going to be alive and present.
You know? I'm trying to hold back, but I'm just going to say it. There's apparently there's a particular kinds of cactuses where you can graft on peyote and the peyote will grow quite prolifically. So just a thing to throw out there in terms of like greenhouse production to take the pressure off from other places. Yep,
absolutely. That's something that we've actually been in a conversation with one of our botanists. That's we were talking about that, and we have like some of our curriculum. Actually, we talk about this sort of waste sustainability, you know. And so obviously these aren't public documents yet because we're working internally on it, but these are all things that we've already been considering and figuring out the best models and methods. And one of them that did come up is just like you're saying, being able to graft, being able to use some San Pedro to actually get some peyote to grow.
Yeah, that'd be pretty amazing.
And actually heard somebody too is talking about iboga because it's the root. You know, that's a big issue that somebody is actually doing some sort of deep water growing. So you can pull it out and just kind of get the roots on the bottom and put it back in. And you don't have to worry about actually killing the plant. So I think, again, there's going to be a lot of really interesting botanical, technical advances that we'll learn about for ways to be sustainable and really bring these forward in a good way.
it's a the sustainability conversations, like obviously really important. Well, obviously really important, but I guess important to me personally for whatever reason. Like that peyote conversation is one of the main reasons why I'm probably not going to touch peyote for at least another 5 to 7 years or so. And then, bufo alvarius, I'm just not going to touch that. I don't think that's cool. And then iboga, talking to folks about iboga is really interesting because there seems to be a split in that population of like, some are convinced it's going extinct or becoming quite rare, and others are like, no, that's just lies to increase the price. Like, okay, that's fascinating. But if we can just get it out of there and it's not even that conversation anymore, and the Bwiti have all of the plant they need, then like there's theoretically no harm. I don't think the Bwiti care, but I haven't talked to them yet.
Yeah, I mean, we did look a little bit into, I think it's called the Nagoya protocols, which is equitable access across the world. How do we share resources, materials? How does a certain country have sort of the heritage of that? So, for example, Iboga is a national heritage plant or a national treasure in Gabon, I believe. So if there was to be any exporting or anything like that, we'd have to go through a reciprocation process and asking for permission and making sure that there's some sort of reciprocity back to the people who are offering the plants and things like that. So that's a big thing that we'd like to maybe get into, but the U.S. hasn't signed on to it. But it would be great if Oakland was to sign on to something like that at some point in time as things develop further, so we can actually have these really strong connections between these original wisdom holders of these traditions as well.
Yeah, that seems like a really interesting protocol. I need to dig in on that.
Yes, yeah, I could be wrong on the name, but check it out. Yeah, from Japan.
Nagoya. Move on from that one, but yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, and there are ways to make this really equitable and figure it out. And there's plants with ibogaine, like you've mentioned, that aren't iboga, so that's also of great benefit. And I'm also told there's synthesis methods coming downstream that will decrease plant pressures as well.
Yeah, so that's the tricky part with a lot of the, like some of these, synthesis of 5-MeO-DMT would maybe be better than Sonoran Desert Toads, or synthesis of ibogaine versus iboga. Technically, the resolution doesn't allow for that at this point in time. Right. I think mainly because synthesis involves more of a regulated process and laboratory situation, and then brings, other entities into this. And so maybe just trying to set up how it is here on the grassroots level first,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. So have you ever spoken to the folks from LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition?
I have only, I haven't spoken to them directly. I was supposed to do a conference with them at UC Davis maybe like 4 years ago, and there were some issues with the directions and they weren't there. So we were close, but we never quite got to there. But that might also be someone that we want to chat with about for seminars and engaging with law enforcement and that type of thing.
Yeah, like I was brainstorming on how do we get messages out to various groups yesterday, and talking to somebody who was trying to start a project like that nationally. There's just all these groups that want to hear from us, everybody involved in the movement, like the Rotary Club, different social clubs like Lions, Optimist. There's all sorts of groups like teachers unions, police unions. There's like county meetups, state meetups, conferences all the time. So it seems extraordinarily like a huge opportunity we could jump on to spread the word locally where we're at. Like we don't necessarily need to fly 1,000 miles, especially you live right there in the middle of it. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there is some, it sounds like there are some Denver folks that are kind of connecting with us. I think Pam, I believe, we're going to be chatting with tomorrow maybe, and a couple other folks who are looking at, we have this Oakland framework for access and safety and education. I'm missing the title of it exactly. Homework. Hold on. Let me just name it right here. But anyway, we had this document that we put together that was a combination of things that, DNO and Erie and Sage Integrative Health and everybody put together as far as like safe practices, basic understanding of the sort of the process, a clinical referral system, a community education referral system, and just giving people resources that way. The name of it is the Oakland Equitable and Responsible Access Framework for Entheogenic Plant and Fungi Use in Urban Communities. Whew. I think there's an acronym there, but I don't know if it spells anything good. So, but that's really great because, it's something that a lot of us worked on. And, I think these collaborative documents are amazing too, because, you start off with something and then you just have a bunch of people keep adding to it and polishing it. And then when you're done, you're just like, whoa, this is amazing, So hopefully we can start sharing this around. And I'm sure that, Denver will have a slightly different version, and Portland will have a slightly different version, and Detroit will have a slightly different version. I think that's also beautiful because you can really get the flavor of these different communities too through this, how they want to design their projects,
Yeah. So I have I guess like a logistical tip question. I'm sure maybe you've gotten these emails. We've gotten tons of them. Denver has legalized or decriminalized mushrooms, and Oakland has legalized or decriminalized plants and fungi. Can I come and have a session? And, now that this is, I think some people are getting really confused about the terminology and of legalization versus decriminalization. And so I'm just wondering, how are you approaching that? What type of advice are you giving people? Because I'm sure a lot of people maybe listening, maybe think, oh, maybe I should just go to Oakland and try to attend a ceremony. And, I think a lot of people are starting to, they're asking us these questions, and it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just real briefly on that, and I'll let Veronica go. I would say if you're thinking about going to Oakland or Denver, what you should do is save your money and get your city council to vote for this to happen in your city, because it's possible. You can do it. And I think that's key. And then you can actually start building your own thing.
Might be cheaper.
Yeah, it might be cheaper too. Right? And I think just real briefly, I think that people we're kind of saying is right now is like there's not anything available. We're not putting it out there. There's not necessarily ceremonies, but there are already these things happening. So as Erie, as a federal nonprofit, we can't actually offer any experiences to people, but we can say, hey, here are these community events. People are obviously allowed to talk about things a little bit more openly now, and perhaps you're going to be able to meet some community. We're really trying to make sure that people are going into communities to find it versus, I have this thing and I'm going to go cruise solo style, because community obviously is really important. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, yes. And as we say, we're here to educate people, maybe educate in safe practices, but in terms of referrals and things like that, obviously that's not what we're here to do. But definitely guiding them to be in the right places, in the places of community, and then get into their interactions. There's a lot of underground work here, and it's going to keep underground until things are safe to be, maybe, that can express openly what they're doing. But I think the main thing that we're focusing right now is on education and leading people to the right communities, so they can start conversations there.
And this is something that, think about it, there's an article out recently, and thank you, Magnolia, for taking all the calls from all the people asking for psychedelics from dispensary. I just want to let everyone know that the nonprofits have been having to do that since Michael Pollan put his book out. So thank goodness a dispensary that has staff can now do it, because we've been having to answer these questions for years now. So that's kind of a funny thing is now there's a bigger community, and of course, there's not going to be at a dispensary, but now there's people that can actually have those questions. It'd be great to have somebody that is like a info line that could ask, because there's probably a lot of other questions that are happening at Magnolia outside of, can I buy these, but what are they? What does it involve? What's going on here? And so it'd be great to have some, we were talking about existing networks. So really tapping into the existing networks, the neighborhood community networks, the dispensary networks, the people that are already doing this work, so that when we can have somebody that's the person at that place that knows how to answer some of those questions, or at least where to direct people, But I think that's part of this, and, the biggest question is, this thing's going to go out of, as soon as it happens, everyone's going to be out in the street. And, you've been, 2 months now, and we've been 3 weeks now. And so far it's not bad, so everyone's being responsible still. So, but we're just going to keep rolling out the education as we move forward. So.
Yeah, the education piece is huge. I think that's really big.
Yeah, it's probably a boring conversation for us to keep going back to education, but that's really critical, we think. So, yeah.
Well, it's also preparation,
Yeah.
Preparing people for when things happen, then they're ready, as opposed to just waiting or have them do it in an unsafe way. All those things. So that for us it's because that's the main thing that they want. They want a community that is striving if they choose to do these things. That's what we want. We want more accounts on the benefits of, you know, using this plant medicines than otherwise, because we're trying to move, like really prove that, you know, they are helpful in the right conditions.
Can I ask you guys what are the pushbacks you've been getting, and what things can we learn from you guys?
Ooh. So I was only partly involved in the Denver stuff. Like I met some people, did some media with them, and you know, I go to Denver pretty often. But pushback, it's really corny stuff, like from the general public, like oh, but people are going to drive, and that was really the only thing that people would say. People are going to drive. I'm like, well, do you have any idea how many people are driving drunk? And the brazenness with which you would have to jump behind the wheel of a car high on mushrooms is extraordinary. I think it gives you the feedback you need to know not to do that 99% of the time.
Yeah, the driving thing is something that people, that's the thing that it's like the repetitive phrase over and over again, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, and it's, you know, yeah, I'm sure people are going to do it, but it's really rare.
Yeah, it's not like cannabis. Cannabis, I think that's something that's probably people have been doing forever, but you know, people have been doing mushrooms for just as long and not jumping in a car, you know? Or yeah, and then we have alcohol, which people do all the time and get in a car. And I think the difference is with alcohol, you're like, I can drive. And with mushrooms, you're like, I'm not driving today.
I hate to say this on a public space, but I have seen probably 20 cases of where people are okay. They think they're okay to drive on LSD. So I wonder if there's a difference there between LSD and mushrooms in terms of like willingness to jump behind the wheel.
It might also be that it's a 12-hour journey. So by about hour 10, you're like, I gotta go somewhere. With mushrooms, you got 5 to 6, so that's doable. You know, you can hang out without driving for that amount of time. Yeah?
Right. Cool. So I think we've probably got to wrap pretty soon. Is there anything either of you wanted to throw out that we didn't get a chance to cover yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I mean, just basically, if there are any cities out there that, I don't know, when is this going to be published? We're having a webinar on Thursday, so this is probably not going to be out before Thursday. But if you do want, we're going to be recording the webinar. So contact us at either at info@decriminalizenature.org. If you get a bounce back there, try decriminature@gmail.com. Our social media is @decriminalizenature on Instagram and Facebook, @decriminature on Twitter. Good ways to contact us there. We're trying to help people out. We have our resolution. It's all open source. We'll try and give mentorship and bring educational tools to people as well. Bring your community together, make this happen in your city. Let's join together as a bigger kind of unit. I think that's what's really important here.
Well, thank you both. Really appreciate your time and all of the effort you've put in on this project. It's as an outsider, people should realize that they really have no idea how much work you two have put in and the rest of the team. It's an extraordinary effort.
If I was in person, I'd give you a high five, but I'll give you a virtual high five. Awesome work, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much
for the opportunity.
Yeah. And thank you for letting us chat with you today.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Take care, and until next time.
Yep, sounds good. Have a good one.